We going?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Welcome to... Good start.
And don't you dare edit that out.
It's been a long weekend, okay? Welcome to episode 24 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod. You can look for me on social media, Rod Kim. There's only me and like an accountant or something. He's not me.
And I am JC. You can also find me on social media at the John Carl on pretty much everything. There is a John Carl, but he is a real estate agent from South Dakota or something like that. And he just won't give up the name. So that's why I have the Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, which is going to be very important in the coming weeks, building up to the release of X-Men 97 coming to Disney Plus in 2023.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that came out over 28 years ago. There will be some spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet, except maybe this one. This is a two-parter, but we'll get to that. We're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way, unless they fix their episode order, because it gets kind of nuts after this.
Yeah, it gets a little weird after this, and we kind of talk crap on it. But don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Rod, you just really are loving the Instagram Reels. Reels are treating us well on there.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, we record these episodes in batches, so if we're reacting to any news about the upcoming series, we're incredibly late. Like, just to date the episode, this is the day where they announced that Morph is getting his own action figure in the VHS series line.
Yeah, and just the box, not even the figure.
Yeah, they haven't even shown it to us. Like, it's not for pre-order or anything yet.
It's just like a glob of Play-Doh.
You're the worst.
This is me.
Yes, it's you. We literally have a script in front of us.
Now onto the show. Today, we're going to be talking about the Phoenix Saga, but because it was 5 full-length episodes, we're diving into it in 2 parts. We're going to start off with Season 3, Episodes 3 and 4. They were titled Sacrifice and The Dark Shroud, respectively. They aired on September 5th and 6th, 1994, as part of a week-long event and currently sits at a 7.8 and 7.7 star rating on IMDb, respectively.
So just some really cool, interesting facts before we get into the episode. This was promoted at the end of the previous episode, the 2-parter Out of the Past, which happened the last weekend of July, first weekend of August. This didn't start until, what did we say, September? And then the next episode to air actually literally aired on like the Saturday. So it was like nothing, preview, months of nothing, 6 episodes in 6 days.
That had to have been like a scheduling with the animation studio thing on top of the saga, right?
According to Eric Lewald's book, it was an intentional thing.
Oh, wow.
It was like, let's come back and it's a bang. I still have to read all the chapters about going into season 3. I know I said I was going to do it last time, but we had to watch 5 episodes in prep for only 2 episodes here. So 5 parts, which meant TV time that is 110 minutes, which is essentially like doing a feature-length movie, but they gave it to us in standalone digestible parts, even though I think the last one probably wouldn't be that great if you watched it on its own.
No, it's just the third act battle.
Yeah, and this is based on the X-Men comics numbers 96 through 109. So it was a 14-part story. But Eric said one of the things that he didn't enjoy about it was there were so many armies interacting and just like so many people that you really lost the human story of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the comic version or
in the comic version?
Okay.
Yeah. And this was essentially the episode that was going to set the status quo for the remaining 32 ordered episodes that were, set to happen at this point.
Yeah.
So
I remember, I don't know if I remember it being like anticipated for me at least, but after it happened, like this is gonna be sacrilegious. So I don't, if anybody that I went to church youth group with hears this, sorry, I guess, but this is up there with me with Bible stories. And like I could, even if I don't remember details, there's these sticking points that are always true. Like I could be, on my deathbed and somebody asked me like, what's the Phoenix Saga about? And I could be like, oh, and Jean Grey, and she goes into space and then the radiation and the space bird, like all that stuff. I just spoiled the whole series for you.
Really did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If we said Jean Grey, Phoenix, space bird, I feel like that's the thing people would probably already know at this point. So I don't think you've ruined it for anybody.
I do wish, now that I've watched it again, just some pre-thoughts, I wish that one of the 2 attempts at the Phoenix Saga in live action would have just taken this. There was enough time. Like, you could just adapt this, like use it as a storyboard or something. And I know there's people who argue like, well, it's campy or it wouldn't translate to live action, whatever. They made Morbius. Like, you can throw money at this if you threw money at Morbius. Like, there was worse things. Like, this was so good. Anyway, on that note, this was, like you said, this was cool because it ended the last episode on that incredible graphic teasing this with the sideways fire and everything. Spaceship. So this episode opens up on like a space war with a woman's voice kind of narrating and overlays of Xavier having a nightmare. So we just kind of gathering these are visions he's having. Xavier is asking how he knows her, although not to her. He's like, how do I know her?
Well, he starts off by asking like, who are you? Where are you? That because Xavier's seeing the space battle in his head.
Yeah.
So he's really just confused still because he started getting those visions when he touched the ship in the previous episode, and now he's starting to get involved in it.
Yeah.
Like he's like, well, this isn't just me having a trip. There's a reason this is happening.
And I described it as the battle looked like green X-wings fighting like bug ships, but instead of being X's, they were like T's. Like kind of like rotated.
There's so many problems in what you just said of saying that these look like X-wings. Because that's not how X-wings work, Rod. We're just going to move on from that. But he also asks, who is trying to hurt you? Mm-hmm. So he is gathering that the person who's reaching out to him is the one who's being chased by, as you said,
the green X-wings.
Yeah.
So then the bug ships get captured, and there was the best way we could describe it is from the previous episode, from the vision Xavier had. He saw something that looked like either a bug alien or a helmet that kind of looked
bulbous.
Like, reaching out. It was pretty much a repeat from the previous episode, and then that kind of ended his nightmare. And he says they're coming, really ominous like. We cut to the mansion, or I guess they're already in the mansion, but it cuts to like the war room and stuff, and Xavier's calling all the X-Men.
And everybody shows up in their pajamas.
Yeah, the X-jammies is what I have in here.
Of course you do. Why wouldn't you write X-jammies?
And Wolverine's especially pissed off, but that's on brand.
Well, I mean, he was probably drunk.
Yeah.
Even though they don't acknowledge it in the show, Wolverine was definitely drunk.
And they sit down, and Wolverine says he smells zit cream, and it embarrasses Jubilee because we're supposed to be reminded that she's the only teenager in this house.
The thing that was always interesting for me about Jubilee is she's 13 here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I always interpreted her, maybe it's just how she was drawn, I always interpreted her as like 16 or 17.
Yeah, same. I thought she was like a little older teenager.
She's
wild.
No, she's super young, so she would definitely be in like that awkward hitting puberty because she just got her mutant powers, which makes sense that she would be 13 for that. But then also like skin problems and all that fun stuff we all got to grow out of.
And Gambit calling her fat.
Speaking of Gambit.
Yeah, they acknowledge that Rogue is on a mission, so she's not there, and Gambit just arrives because he's getting home from a date. They make some like interesting jokes for a children's show about how he's just like still going strong or something. There's some double entendre there.
You definitely read more into the double entendre than what is intended. I don't even think there was entendre there.
Okay. And anyway, and then Xavier starts explaining that they need to sneak into the space shuttle Starcore.
Right, but he basically is letting them all know he's been continuing to have these visions. We get a little bit of a montage, and we see from the end of the last episode, the dude with the heavy makeup is how I described him.
Yeah.
We see this pink crystal, and then we see an image that wasn't in his previous visions, which was a guy in red armor, who we'll get to more details of who that is a little bit later. But it was interesting for me because that meant that Xavier was experiencing more. And I couldn't tell if he was having like a flashback of a previous vision that we hadn't seen, thus seeing the guy in red, or if this was even new information that was like getting like
right at that moment.
Yeah, like airdropped into his skull. I just explained to Rod what airdrop was when it isn't in context of an iPhone. So.
Yeah, and that guy in the red armor and stuff, he kind of read to me like a He-Man character,
I could see that.
Like drawn.
Yeah, very barbarian-esque feel.
And the straps and stuff, and then the dark heavy makeup guy. I think I might have said this last time.
There was a He-Man character. I know the one you're talking about.
Okay.
Who his helmet was differently, but there was a dude who had the red chest plate that I could totally see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the guy with the heavy eye makeup kind of looked like a Flash Gordon villain to me.
Yes, yeah, very much. I'm not a big Flash Gordon fan, but I know the evil emperor or whoever
Yeah.
that Flash Gordon fought that you're referring to.
Yeah, just kind of.
Didn't he have like was it Meng or something like that? I want to say
probably something that didn't age well.
Yeah. I mean, the character himself was problematic now, but
I think I'm only familiar with it in like the memes and stuff, you know. So I don't remember the show all that much.
Yeah, thinking movie. I'm not even thinking.
Oh.
But I'm pretty sure it was problematic wherever it lived. Yeah. But back to the space station.
Yeah. Beast makes a comment that he actually knows Dr. Corbeau, who's going to be on the shuttle, and that it's going to be docking onto Eagle 1 space station. And Xavier's like, that's the reason you need to be on the shuttle to get into that space station. Gambit makes the comment that breaking into government installations is not usually our style. I was like, really? Wasn't that literally your first episode?
I think Gambit was probably trying to say we're not very good at it.
Okay.
Because remember the time they broke into a government facility, somebody was thought to have died? You know what? I will go out on a limb. I agree with Gambit.
Yeah. And Xavier tells them that he can't say why, but it's an event of immense importance.
Wolverine gets pissed again, which is great, where he's just like makes about as much sense as everything else we do.
And they even animate his hands all the way up to his face, just whatever. Like
again, Rod is doing hand motions on an audio only podcast.
You know, you can see him hearing me. They make
your voice does change as you're doing hand motions. I want to point that out. Like as you're raising your hand, your voice gets higher. Yeah.
And Xavier says the Storm should remain on Earth, which, small detail, makes sense. She probably doesn't have very many powers in outer space, right? Controlling the weather and stuff. How much lightning could you summon in outer space? I don't know what her comic book canon is, but for that.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you on this one, Rod. I don't have a good argument against
that. Can you
that.
summon tornadoes in outer space and stuff? Like, where's Neil deGrasse Tyson? He needs to explain this stuff.
Yeah, let's have him ruin something we love. That'd be great. Shout us out, Neil. Tell us how everything we liked as kids sucked.
But even tactically, that makes sense. Because if you're going to have your first in command off Earth, then you should have your second command on Earth.
Right, because in case everybody dies, you're going to want to make sure you have a leader who could help you rebuild the team.
Yeah. Then we cut to Xavier in his study. He's by himself contemplating in the darkness, and Cyclops comes to see him and asks him what the mission is about. And Xavier confesses he doesn't really know what his visions mean.
Right, and Scott says, don't you trust us, don't you trust me? Which, it's kind of this ongoing issue that we have with Cyclops, which, to be fair, makes him an interesting character, that he is the leader, but you see the doubt in him. But it's also a part of what makes him kind of annoying at the same time.
Although, to be fair, if I were any of the X-Men, I would also be questioning this. Like, I don't think that they've been sent into outer space yet at all.
No, they have not.
Let alone on a whim of just a vague vision that even their leader can't explain.
It's true. They are literally going to outer space, and they found out this whole plan in like a 2-minute time frame.
Yeah. And so we see the Blackbird take off. It goes into stealth mode.
Which, by the way, you noticed the music cue changed at that point? It was the theme and like...
Weird.
It was, would you call it like lo-fi? Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was just... It wasn't even smooth jazz. It just felt like weird elevator music.
It changed tones. It was interesting.
I kind of like it. Ron, please send us a copy of that recording.
Right. I don't know if you listen to the RKVC video or watch the RKVC video or listen to the interview we did with him. Apparently all those masters have been destroyed because Saban was so low budget that they re-recorded over tapes.
Great.
Anyway, on that note, so they go into stealth mode to go on their way to the space shuttle, and they go out of their way to show an empty radar screen at the launch place.
You see a control room.
Control room, yeah.
Yep, that's the word.
And so they get there. Storm makes a fog so they can sneak in. Beast has some pent-up anger because he just chucks Wolverine.
So he chucks Wolverine before the storm fog. That was the funniest part to me. He literally... Wolverine's like, well, what do we got? And Beast just throws him. Like, no explanation, no prep like you get for a fastball special, just hucks him into the air.
And then Cyclops does this weird video game backflip where he like kind of sidekicks and stuff. And then Beast comes over gently with like Jubilee and who else was with Jean, right? And Jean can fly.
Well, can she fly up at this point? Have we seen Jean fly?
Hasn't she used her telepathy to levitate, I think, in some fights and stuff?
I don't think so.
Ooh, okay.
I think you're jumping ahead, Rod.
Interesting. Okay. I just assumed because she's moving stuff with her mind, so
I don't think we've seen her actually levitate. I want to say no, because if remember there was the fight with Apocalypse that she was falling and Rogue had to catch her.
That's right. Okay.
Well, Rod is making shit up, everybody. Don't trust anything Rod says.
That's just generally true.
Right.
And I made a comment that the space station not space station, like the space control area or whatever, like looks kind of like the Mutual Control Agency, which is not a great omen for them. So
we did get a good moment before they broke in, though, or as they went over the fence. Wolverine was really pissy, and then we got a sorry dad moment.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it was basically like, stop goofing around.
Sorry, Dad. And so they run up and they get to like a sealed door, like a big metal door, and Wolverine cuts into it and it sets off the alarm, and then we quickly learn that was on purpose.
Yeah, that was something. For a half second I was like, that's a horrible plan, and then immediately they addressed it. So I was like, okay, it's not a horrible plan. Granted, they don't know what's on the other side of the door. Like, if there was a guard there, that could have been a problem. But yeah. So we find out that the plan is Jubilee is there to act as the distraction, so that way, with the alarm being set off, they have an excuse for it. Mm-hmm. I feel like Jubilee wouldn't have been able to cut her way through with a claw to the door. We'll let it go, though. Yeah.
I'll also get past the fence and all that stuff. So Jubilee does get caught, and the guards take her away. The X-Men arrive in like the astronaut locker room and ambush the astronauts. Cyclops, we learn, has a stun setting for his laser blast.
Well, the optic blast is like, essentially, it is a concussion scenario. Mm-hmm. It is not laser. Mm-hmm. So it's not supposed to cut through stuff. So when he goes all out and is like breaking through rocks or shooting through Sinister, that's force going through it, as opposed to like a lightsaber that's like cauterizing it, lighting it on fire.
I think for me personally, the first time I actually heard that was when Wally was with us a few weeks ago, and he was talking about it being a push force thing. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So it's like, less a laser, more just force. It
is not the scene from Man of Steel where it's just cutting through sides of buildings because it's like a super laser. Correct.
So they steal their astronaut suits and stuff.
Space suits,
yes.
Yes.
Sure. This is why I'm not an astronaut. Yeah, and math. And they stow away the actual astronauts in like a sealed room, but they said they left them with plenty of food. It's just a funny, like, I guess it's humane, but you're also locking a bunch of people in a room together.
Right. One thing I do want to point out, if you look at the designs of the astronaut spacesuits, they are very much the Russian cosmonaut style suits, as opposed to American, like, NASA style suits. And we've talked about this before. Part of that just comes from the fact that this was animated overseas. Mm-hmm. And if they're looking up what they have as available reference, they might not know there's a difference between the white NASA suits versus the old school cosmonaut suits. Because they did the same thing with how the subway, and I'm like, I looked at that and I'm like, you could go back to not Indiana Jones. You could go back to Crocodile Dundee and see what a New York subway train looks like. And they went with something that was more Japanese feeling to me.
That makes sense, though, because I recognize it didn't look, because that American astronaut is like very iconic, like Buzz Aldrin look or whatever. Even Buzz Lightyear looks more American than these suits in here did. So I didn't know those were the cosmonaut thing. That's really interesting.
I don't know if it was specifically the cosmonauts, but it definitely looks way more like it than our side. And then
Dr. Corbeau,
he shows up, is like kind of shocked, and then Jean just kind of like instantly mind fucks him.
Yeah, like Wanda Maximoff's him.
No,
it's just not really though. It's not the same power, but
same effect.
Yeah. So that all the X-Men look like his original crew. Lucky for them, they had the exact amount of people,
and they don't have to talk.
Yes, I didn't think about that. They just stay quiet the whole time.
Scott said something, and that was it. Everybody else, maybe that was a part of the reason why they didn't include Storm.
Oh,
could you imagine Storm's iconic voice? And he just looks and he's like, "Steven, you don't sound like that."
Like, sound like a powerful black woman. Where did that come from? And after the shuttle takes off, Xavier and Storm go to rescue Jubilee. And when I say Xavier and Storm, I mean Xavier watches and Storm does it. And she rescues her in like a tornado.
With a tornado.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Literally save Jubilee with tornado is my note.
And also make sure she busted the window doing it, because Storm needs to break glass whenever something like that happens.
I mean, if it was closed, how else? A tornado can't gently open a window rod.
And then Jubilee's it's funny because this is maybe showing my age. While it was happening, I was like,
this is what's going to show your age?
Right. One of the things added to the list. I was thinking, like, that must be insane riding in a tornado. But the show addressed it immediately. Jubilee's like, can we do it again? I was like, right, she's 13. And so we're back on the space station.
In space.
Yeah, it's in space. And Beast talks about the probe it's a close orbital probe.
Close orbital solar probe.
Solar probe,
yep. Has a very important aspect later in the episode.
And
Wolverine is still questioning why they're on the ship. He hates everything about this.
Of all the times, yes, this is the one that makes sense. I'm still questioning why they're on here, and I know what the story's about. So they dock to the space station, which is really quickly, because I feel like in real life, these missions seem to take like a long time, like days to reach them. But luckily for us, it's a few minutes.
I also don't know how accurate that is.
Oh, really? Because I feel like I don't know. I feel like when I watched them as a kid, it took like longer than just like a few minutes to.
Your perception as a child was also much different when it comes to time.
So they dock onto the space station. As they're walking through like the airlock area, Jean like does her iconic moan, which sounds worse than it is. But if you watch the show, you know.
You really need to not use that phrase.
And she says that this makes it sound even worse. She says there's a presence she's never felt before.
That's not worse.
And that it's a trap.
Yes. And then we get green gas coming through.
Yeah. And then they get gassed. She drops the illusion. And so Corbo's like, what is going on? Hank, what are you doing here? Because apparently Hank's the only one he knows, I guess.
Well, Hank said he knew him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that before I'd assumed that the X-Men were known well enough that he would have...
Probably not their first names.
Yeah.
Like they probably just know Cyclops is Cyclops, not as Scott, you know. All
of them try to use their powers to some extent, but they all come like just short of being able to effectively use them. So when they're all passed out, that guy in the red armor shows up at the airlock and he introduces himself as Eric the Red. And so fitting.
Who is a Shi'ar emissary.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically like, Eric the Red welcomes you. So not being as big of a comic book guy, what were your original thoughts on Eric?
Just that he looked like a He-Man character. And I didn't remember him from anything else. If there was an action figure, I don't remember it. If he was in, like, I definitely don't remember from comics, and I didn't have any trading cards. So this was a pretty one-off for me.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically had the X-Men set of trading cards. There were the Marvel trading cards, and then there was like the X-Men series they also put out because it was the 90s and the X-Men were the hottest shit for Marvel at that point. Like, honestly, probably even hotter than Spider-Man at that point.
Totally.
But I didn't even remember Eric being a thing until I started rewatching the show, because if he's in the comics right now, he's in one of the X-Men books that I'm not picking up. And Rod could tell you, I pick up like 6 of the 8 X-Men books every month right now.
Yeah, so, there's plenty.
Yeah. So Eric, which I'm sorry, the name just doesn't fit. Like you literally have Lilandra and that you're stowaways because of her. Why is your name Eric?
Right.
And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the Leewalds before you ask.
Down the road, I have a comment about that. And because they kind of address the name later on in this mini series and stuff, and it kind of cracks me up, but we'll get there. We'll get to that point. Yeah, like you just mentioned, that he's surprised that they're stowaways, and he blames the stowaways on Lilandra.
He says, like, screw it, get Corbo, and he has the astronauts on the space station, like, mind controlled, and they're following his orders. He's like, yep, throw them all in the airlock, fuck them.
And you know that they're mind controlled because their necks are glowing.
I think that is a very important thing. Otherwise, they're evil astronauts.
Right. And so, like you said, they're in the airlock. They decide to dispose of them, so they just literally try to toss them into space. But Jean wakes up a little early. We find out a little bit later it's because she said she put a psychokinetic shield around her, so she was able to wake up. Which I still
don't like the phrase psychokinetic.
Right, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
And also, there wasn't an indication before that helped her, except that she woke up a little earlier. But she's able to save Scott from flying out the airlock.
It's called drama.
Right.
So as much as Rod wasn't happy that Cyclops was saved, Jean is able to stop, and she closes the hatch. And then she tries to override the mind control, but she can't because there's devices on the necks of the astronauts, as opposed to it being also psychically mind controlled.
Yeah, so it's like a hardwire thing, literally. And we cut back to the main
control room.
Is it a control room? It's the cockpit, basically, kind of a control room thing, like the spaceship.
It was too big. No, it's too big to be a cockpit because it's a space station. It doesn't like, I guess,
control room.
Yeah, it doesn't traverse.
So they're on the other side of that door.
Are total astrophysicist, engineer type people. All the technical terminology is accurate.
So speaking of, we're in that room. They're talking about the vortex wormhole theory stuff, and how the Shi'ar, Eric the Red is explaining this to Corbo, and how the Shi'ar use those wormhole/vortexes to travel, and that they're trying to intercept the rebel Lilandra from this wormhole. I
also wanted to point out, at this point, there was a mention of space debris, but the way it was said because of the Canadian accent was space debris.
Oh, yeah. I made a mental note of, like, see if that's important later. No.
I made a physical note.
And so then, since the X-Men have woken up, they break through the door and they interrupt that villain monologue before he's able to continue.
Right. Cyclops takes a shot at Eric, which does nothing to him.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of a scuffle, but in the middle of that, Lilandra starts arriving, or who we assume is Lilandra, arriving through the wormhole.
Which is a Shi'ar Class Y cruiser, specifically.
Oh, so it's not an X-Wing, it's a Y. No.
It's
that's the
literally not even the right ship.
It's the bug cruiser thing.
You're painful.
So they start like a sequence of things on the computer to like fire a laser cannon at Lilandra's ship, and Cyclops zaps the computers before they can do its thing, and the laser cannon just misses Lilandra's ship.
But it also overloads the console,
Yeah.
which starts a very bad series of events for the X-Men.
So it kind of basically goes into like a almost self-destruct, but not really. It's just everything's blowing up.
It's a destruction mode. It's definitely not a self-destruction mode.
Yeah. Apparently the consoles are filled with gasoline or something. Like they're just exploding. Like
There's pressure in space.
right. So Eric and the mind-controlled astronauts escape. X-Men run back to the shuttle and also pick up the unconscious crew on their way out. The space station, this is interesting. There's a whole lot of stuff happening all at once. The space station is exploding.
It's a reactor that's overloading.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Reactor overloads and is exploding. And Eric, the Red, just misses the Shi'ar Star Cruiser. The shuttle that the Star Corps shuttle that the X-Men are in is escaping, but is going to cross the path of, like you said, the chemtrail of the
Contrail.
The contrail.
Nope, don't go down the wrong route with this. It's the
contrail,
contrail, not
okay.
chemtrails.
Of the Star Cruiser that Lilandra's presumably in.
Right, and the contrail, in theory, would be like heavy radiation, things like that. Like literally think Origin of the Fantastic Four. It's like,
okay.
yeah, it's like flying through a solar flare in theory.
And
Which would have massive radiation, like off the scale.
Yeah, they make a very quick reference to like how disastrous that would be.
Yeah.
So Beast points out that because the solar probe is in there, they can go into it for radiation protection or just protection in general.
And especially the radiation.
Yeah, especially radiation.
Yeah.
And Corbeau says that someone has to stay behind to actually like kind of pilot the ship, basically.
Right, because even if they're in there, they're not going to be able to get themselves out and keep them on track of where they need to land.
And so Jean says that she can do it. She volunteers herself, and she uses her or psychokinetic. I don't know what you call it.
That's telepathy.
Yeah,
at that point. That's just telepathy. There's no psychokinetic anything.
She kind of pulls a rogue. She knocks out Corbeau while hopefully not stealing. Taking
She borrows
his flight knowledge. Cyclops, understandably disagrees.
Well, Cyclops at that point is very much I'm the leader. I'm the one who should be doing this.
Yeah. And also it's the woman he loves who's
right.
kind of not married to.
So she knocks him out.
Yeah. And they all get into the probe. Does that sound right?
So one thing you did jump past, there was a moment between Logan and Jean.
That's right.
And it's kind of just like, I have to be the one to do this. And Wolverine just acknowledges and
he gets emotional.
wishes her good luck, and then there's like the kiss on the cheek.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that they don't go full-fledged like she's also in love with Logan, but you could tell there's an affection that she has for him that she doesn't express to the other male members of the team too.
Yeah, she cares about
there's some conflict there. So at that point, everybody gets into is it probe? Is it really they get into the probe?
Yeah. So I was like, it's just I wrote it down.
Close orbital solar probe. You are right.
I wrote it down, and then I'm just now reading it back out loud. I was like, yeah, no, that's what they go into the probe instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
And as Jean's piloting, and as they pass through that energy field or contrail or whatever, Jean's screaming, and then the episode ends with an image, like a still image of the Phoenix in the fire.
Yeah, you see the face of the bird, and it's a outline within the fire. So,
and I think what was hilarious, because this ends the first part, is that it was such a dramatic moment. The music swelling, she's screaming, the bird's face is there and stuff.
You have the bird like caw noise too, right? Yeah.
And then it cuts to that Saban end card with the children giggling. So I was like, like. What?
The Saban end cards are perfect timing.
Right, and it's like the Unity one where they're like holding hands around the world and the kids are...
They're holding they're holding hands and there's flags and stuff like that. So that's where the first episode ended. And because this is a 5-parter, we're going to jump straight into the next episode.
Yeah. And so the next episode picks up right where the last one left off. Jean's in pain from going through this energy field thing or whatever, but she's staying conscious, kind of.
Yeah, she shouts, "I must hold on." She actually gets like knocked out of the chair, and she calls for help. She calls for Scott and Logan to help her, even though she probably knows there's nothing that she's going to be able to do or say that is going to get them. Like, they're literally in another thing through the probe, all that stuff.
And you gotta hope that was just verbal and didn't like leap into the telekinetic part, because can you imagine being in that probe box locked
stuck in the probe box
and then hearing her scream for help through your mind?
No, that's awful, Rod. I don't want to imagine that.
So she screams for help, and then the Phoenix shows up, like literally. And I think it was pretty close to still image again. It was like a very low frame rate.
Yeah, I do notice that there is, I want to say it's because they're hoping for dramatic tension, but it just moves into a lower frame rate. And it's like, it's a slideshow. It's not even like half speed. It's like 1/10 speed.
Yeah. So when the Phoenix helps, we just see her the Phoenix kind of take over her body.
Yeah, she gets possessed, and her eyes are closed while she's possessed. Unfortunately, their trajectory is towards New York, specifically Manhattan.
So she gets up, starts piloting the ship. As it's careening into Manhattan, the shuttle clips the Empire State Building and then flies between the Twin Towers. And then,
it literally, the observation deck, which everybody takes the picture from New York City of the...
You've got mail.
The
No, Sleepless in Seattle. That's right. One of those.
Literally, Seattle's in the name, right?
Yeah.
But where every movie that actually happens in New York...
Well, I think Sleepless in Seattle does... They meet up in New York, don't they?
I don't know. I don't watch that trash. But the observation deck where everybody takes pictures from, it literally takes out one of the rooftop binoculars. Like, that's how... It full-fledged makes contact with that building.
So someone's proposal didn't go right that night.
There's somebody who's getting off the elevator and they literally see it get taken out.
They're on their knee and it's like, okay, I guess that's an omen.
Then, because Rod and I don't look up stuff, we're pretty sure that it ends up crashing into the Hudson.
Yeah.
We're like 90% sure it's the Hudson.
It's a body of water that was near the other things we mentioned. So the shuttle just breaks apart, but the probe falls out and starts sinking. The X-Men are in it. The water starts leaking through. They escape.
Wolverine cuts out the hatch, essentially.
They all swim to the surface. They can't find Jean. Right around that time, there's a glowing spot on the water.
Bubbles pop up.
And it erupts, and she announces herself as the Phoenix. Apparently being possessed by Phoenix gives you a really cool metallic spandex suit. She's in the green and the yellow.
Yep, the iconic green and yellow with a sash on the side, too. Yeah. There's a sash hanging off of her waist.
It's a very stylish and modern galactic entity.
I don't know if in the 90s I would call that modern. That was like some 70s and 80s shit right there.
Then
she immediately faints.
Yeah, she passes out. She's like, help me. And she lands in the water. They rescue her. Obviously, they dive down and go grab her.
Specifically Scott and Logan, though.
And it cuts to the hospital. Jean's in bed. All of them are watching the news of the shuttle getting taken out of the Hudson, or what we assume is the Hudson.
Let's go with Hudson.
Yeah. Beast talks about how they're just going to deny that it ever happened and stuff. The NASA and the government is going to deny that it ever happened.
And Jean is in like this weird fog. Like she actually says, "Did I survive?" Which is a really weird thing for a person to say who's talking.
Yeah. Which actually I didn't remember from when I was a kid watching it. So I was watching it this time. I was like, did this have a deeper meaning than I originally thought? Like,
yes,
like,
it did.
She actually died, was resurrected by the Phoenix?
Yeah, she says that she feels like she is someone else, that she could reach out, touch the moon, and crack it in her hand.
Right.
Which... that's some dark shit.
It's like Galactus kind of stuff, right?
I mean, he uses like a drill, and I wish I was kidding about that.
Cyclops and Beast ask who the Phoenix is. Beast is talking about how NASA's gonna deny anything happened, and also explains that Corbeau doesn't know anything about the aliens or even how any of them that got away survived. So the other governments are concerned about more things coming in through the wormhole. And
new activity in the vortex.
And so Cyclops and Xavier go out to the hallway, and Cyclops finally snaps and he starts yelling at Xavier, and they get into a fight. I think they're the first time that we see between the two of them. Like that, at least, where they're like...
I mean, it's definitely the most heated of it, but there have been times where Scott has snapped at Xavier at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. But Beast is the voice of reason of like, well, you're both kind of idiots right now.
Yeah. Well, because Cyclops is blaming Xavier for sending him out to space without any information, which fair. But then Xavier comes back and Cyclops is like, well, if you would have been a better leader. It's like, now what kind of leader with no information going to outer space with like a crystal, guardian thing? Like, how's that ever going to like work?
A crystal guardian thing.
I don't know how to describe her.
Okay, that was your description of the thing that hasn't even been addressed yet.
Yeah, I know. I was like pulling from the future.
Yep. But
So,
Beast calms it, and he basically diffuses the situation and says he's going to go check out the mind control implants. And we follow Beast outside. Rod, what's the Easter egg at that point?
Is he wearing a Howard the Duck shirt?
He is wearing a Howard the
Okay,
Duck shirt.
I actually made a specific note. It's like, is Beast wearing a Howard the Duck shirt?
So the good thing about all of this is after the episodes are watched, I will go in and do like research on a few websites and stuff like that to confirm things, get character names and stuff like that. Rod watches this like 3 hours before we record. So everything is pure.
Yeah.
And whereas mine is like, I correct shit.
So, I didn't know someone did the homework, and technically Howard the Duck is the first in-theater full-length Marvel movie.
Yes. And
That's
it also,
hilarious.
the suit, I think, was like $1 million or something
Really?
absurd like that.
Oh, Lord.
Because it was full body animatronic. Like at the time, the technology was not efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. For JC reminder, when you listen to this episode go live, find out what the Howard the Duck suit costs and throw it on Instagram.
So anyway, Beast in his Howard the Duck shirt catches Wolverine breaking shit in the alleys.
Just losing it.
Yeah, Beast tells Wolverine, maybe you'll feel better if you go in and see Jean and see that she's okay. And Wolverine's like, well, last time I was on an operating table, it didn't turn out so well. And he shows his claws.
Yeah, he also was only there relatively recently too,
Yeah.
when he had his little trip back up to Canada.
Yeah, so not a great experience. Beast, kind of in his own way of saying, recommends that they go to a bar. And they try to hail a taxi. The driver's freaked out by Beast's face and then takes off.
And Beast makes everybody always says it's so hard to get a cab in New York.
And I wonder if people who didn't live through the era knows that's kind of a thing. It's like a take my wife please kind of joke,
You're right. It is. That was like, it was very much one of those jokes of the era.
Time,
Yeah.
I guess the only equivalent would be some weird like app Uber thing, which is like more complex and not as funny.
I mean, I still don't want to get into cabs in New
Right.
York City at this point. The cabs in New York City are the worst driving experiences I have. So
Then we cut back to the roof of the hospital. Xavier is on the roof because that's where he parked his jet.
yeah, he parked the mini jet.
Yeah, on the roof. We're assuming it's the hospital. Where else would it be?
No, it's
it
definitely
is a hospital because that's the place where they had the padlock on the outside.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
There's
that's
only
what's-
one hospital.
That's what it's for. So Xavier can land on the hospital and get in.
That's a theory.
So he gets into his jet, and before he can take off, like this sky beam.
Yep. The purple space ray hits him in the head again. He says, "Not again," because at this point he's just being attacked by these like mental images and shit.
So he may have wanted to not be driving alone at this point.
I mean, could you imagine if he was driving and he got hit with the space ray?
Right.
Like he just starts bumping into buildings and shit. It picks up the ship. He gets the image of the crystal in his head again.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the crystal pops up, and then it just like does a mini crash because it was only up like 5
Yeah.
feet. Smashes down. And then like this weird. I want to say like the facial expression shows that it is a
Yeah.
darker version of Xavier, but then they added the cloak.
The cape, yeah. I was
Yeah,
you
there's
know
a
it's-
cape,
you know
yeah.
it's evil because he's scowling, and there's a cape for something.
And there's a dark cape. Yep.
So dark, scowling, wearing a cape. Xavier, kind of spirit, comes out of his body and starts like scanning and seeing where the X-Men are. And we see, even though the Jean's in the hospital, some of the X-Men are at the hospital. Others, like Gambit and Jubilee, are like in line for a Broadway show.
Yeah.
And-
And at this point, we don't really have an explanation to what this evil Xavier is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it kind of gives you the impression that it may have been tied to the space ray affecting him in some capacity.
And the first X-Men we visit is Wolverine. He's in the subway, and he's in the car, in a subway car, and he's
By himself.
and he sees a young Yuriko, and clearly, because we've seen the Lady Deathstrike episode by now, is not her, but he gets lured into an empty car, and it turns dark, and he gets attacked by a Sabretooth and a Deadpool.
I want to just say I really loved the animation that they did at this point. As much as I will give them shit when they go to like low frame rate and things like that, this was really cool because it was a very dark subway train. And then you would get like they'd pass by the light and there would just be the quick
Oh, yeah.
progression of the light through the dark car. And that's like, it's a really dope
Cool
effect.
flash,
Yeah.
And especially, Sabretooth is cool because he's so big and ominous, but Deadpool is really cool just because how the red, like flashing.
And he just blends in on the dark colors and
Yeah.
everything like that. And then Deadpool takes a shot, turns into Dark Xavier, who also takes a shot at him.
And knocks Wolverine out of the subway car.
Proceeds to like really go at him too, because he calls him an animal and he says it was a mistake to save you. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, is this is this Xavier's subconscious or is this like Wolverine's subconscious at this point?
Yeah, we don't know, or like an alien thing.
Yeah, is it the spirit that came out of the ship in the last episode? What was it, the Soul Eater or Spirit Eater or whatever it was?
I forgot about that.
Where it was kind of using his own weaknesses against him mentally.
Man, the X-Men, you're right. They've faced a lot of mental hurdles too, traumatic things. So it makes sense that they've tried to go on so many vacations now.
Yes. Lots of vacations. That's why there were swimsuit issues every summer in the 90s.
So in the middle of this fight, Wolverine hears Jubilee screaming for help. He turns around and sees her tied down to the tracks. And he goes to try to save her, but the Dark Xavier
has a glue gun.
Yeah, glues his feet down.
Yeah, that was one of the oh, yep, reminder, this is a cartoon moment. Yep.
Wolverine's able to get out of it pretty quickly. He
dodges a train though. He got close to getting whacked.
And then he goes to scoop up Jubilee, but she disappears, so she's like a hologram or hallucination or something.
Right.
And so he just misses getting hit by the train, like you said, and then he runs up to the surface level on the street where he happens to be right next to where Gambit and Jubilee are waiting in line on a Broadway show. And Gambit was a little borderline creepy because he was hitting on a woman, but he was with Jubilee.
Well, he's with Jubilee because Jubilee is like, you promised you would take me to a show. And he was like, well, yeah, but the night's, you're going to go home pretty soon.
But that was the part that it was like, she was like, you're with me though. And he's like, but my night's not going to end there.
And he's all, Jesus. At least his line is like, yeah, but I'm not with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you, but I'm not with you.
And so the Dark Xavier attacks them, and
Jubilee ends up in the street and almost gets whacked by a car. And when that happens, Wolverine luckily is right there and is able to swoop in because Jubilee probably not durable enough to take getting hit by a New York car.
Yeah. Or any car.
Only thing I will say, unrealistic about this scene, a car traveling that fast down Broadway in New York. Right.
Yeah, because they actually go out of the way to say they're there in Times Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, would not have happened.
Well, especially right now, half of Times Square isn't drivable the way that it used to be either.
Yeah.
In the 90s, you could drive through every street within Times Square. Now, half of them have become outdoor seating and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been there in the 90s. I've only been there after they turned into.
It was dangerous. Yeah. There are murder documentaries about Times Square in the early 90s.
It's still not safe.
But for different reasons.
Anyway, so then we catch up with Storm, who is meditating on what we think is the Brooklyn Bridge.
We're going to go with Brooklyn Bridge because that's the only one I can think of. Yeah.
Neither of us know the geography very well.
Yeah. It's not the George Washington.
Yeah. Yeah, the one because she would have to pay a toll.
Yes. To sit on top of the bridge. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the bridge that Gwen Stacy gets thrown off of and the next snap happens and all that stuff.
She totally survives.
Okay. Rod and I are going to have a very somber conversation about Spider-Man once this episode's over.
So she gets radioed by Jubilee to go to Times Square. So that's how we know that's where they are, to join the others. We see the real Xavier in his ship.
So Xavier is in his ship and he's starting to get control over himself and regain consciousness. We see that there is Jubilee, Gambit, and Wolverine lets the other two know that he's not real because I can't smell him.
Oh, yeah. That comes in handy a little bit later in the saga, too.
Right. So at that point, a bunch of cops show up because, this attack that happened outside the theater took down a wall and stuff like that. And the cops are basically saying, stand down. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, no, he's the one causing the trouble, not us. And the cops are like, who?
Ooh, yeah, they can't see anybody because now that it's like I guess spoiler for Sixth Sense if you haven't seen it in a decade or more. When you go back and watch that footage, all that damage that was done to structures looks like it was done by the X-Men and not the Dark Xavier. It's like Gambit, blowing stuff up or Jubilee blasting things and stuff. It wasn't the Dark Xavier blasting stuff.
Okay. Where was the Sixth Sense spoiler in that, Rod?
You go back and watch the whole movie, you're like, oh, Bruce Willis, he wasn't interacting with anything. Also, it was
I just had to make you take it home because you just threw out that lingering plot line and then didn't actually say the comparison.
It's how I filter my friends. If you keep up, the Storm fogs up the area because they are not going to be able to explain their way out of hallucinating a Dark Xavier.
Which I feel like the cops would have just started shooting into the mist at that
point. And then at the hospital, Cyclops is there trying to call Rogue, and Dark Xavier goes to attack them.
Dark Xavier, yeah, let's go with Dark Xavier. Yeah. That's a solid name for him right now. Calls Scott an ingrate, an incompetent fool, starts attacking him.
All the things we're thinking.
Yeah. Scott shoots Xavier, but it goes right through him.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, that's when Jean realizes it's all in our minds.
Yeah. and she destroys the Dark Xavier with like a psychic projection or
Well, we get a moment of the Phoenix silhouette popping up around her, and she realizes, like, you know, it's a psychic projection of the professor's mind out of control. So we realized, like, this was actually Xavier. This wasn't like an alien. This wasn't like a possession. Like, this was a part of Charles.
Yeah. So it's kind of worse because all those things weren't like, I didn't mean it. It's like, you meant it. You just withheld it.
You don't usually try to kill us. So they head up to the roof where they find Professor.
Because Jean had done like a scan. She's like, he's on the roof. And I don't know how else to describe this. One of the mind-controlled astronauts that Eric the Red had controlled has a gun that like has a camera lens on it. And he's basically live streaming to Eric the Red.
That's actually a really good description of it. Yeah.
And so Eric the Red's watching this live stream essentially and realizes Xavier's the key to all this.
Yeah, so at that point, Xavier admits that all these visions he's been getting have broken through his own protections and his dark side has come out. So this is something that never actually comes to pass within the animated series, so I don't have a problem talking about it because it's a comic spoiler. At one point within the comics, there is a projection that is his darkest sides alongside Magneto's that create the character Onslaught.
Oh, okay.
And it is not possession or anything like that. It is literally the darkest sides of Charles have emerged, essentially.
Sounds dangerous.
I also want to point out at that point, as Charles is like giving his confession and stuff like that, there is a sign on the wall that says Fox.
Yes.
Yep.
It was like on the side, not an alley, but like the brick or whatever.
Yeah, the brick side of the building.
Yeah.
Which we could call an alley, I think.
Which I guess that's like a souvenir of the era, right? Because Fox is no more. It's just 20th Century Studios.
Right. There is, I mean, yeah, Fox Entertainment does not
Fox
exist
Entertainment.
anymore.
We will talk about the other thing.
Yep, the other thing doesn't exist in this world.
So, yeah, he can't be trusted. So he puts the Cyclops in charge.
Yeah, he says he needs to regain control of his subconscious and that his orders until then can't be trusted.
It's a heavy thing to admit. Most leaders wouldn't do that.
And also, he figured it out while he was mostly unconscious.
That's how powerful his mind is. So then we see that Xavier is showing up at Muir Island.
Yep. If all else fails, go to Scotland.
Right. Actually, that's what I do.
I know you do. That's why I said it.
We talked about that in another
You're like, Scotland, relaxing as fuck. Just don't go to the bars that are overhanging the ocean.
Which is strangely familiar because I was also at those bars. Only there were castles.
Yeah, you just didn't throw people through the walls.
Not that I remember. I also didn't drink very much before going there.
So you definitely
very low tolerance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's Moira. She's waiting with a guy, and as soon as Xavier goes to see Moira, she introduces him to her fiance, Sean Cassidy.
Right.
Xavier is visibly bothered by this.
I mean, the dude hasn't seen her in how long already? It's been at least the entire time he was in the Savage Land.
Yeah.
He probably isn't like shooting her emails at this point. He's not calling her on the regular.
I'm guessing that's not something that they're catching up about, with everything that's happening.
Yeah.
I also don't know when they met.
Yeah, so he decides to go to his quarters, and there's this moment between Sean and Moira. Who's like, you think he still loves you?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so they do the only natural thing. They start making out.
After she says that she's probably his only friend left.
Yes. She's like, I'm probably his only friend. Let's make out. That makes me hot. And then the space beam comes out of the sky, which they just don't notice, and hits Xavier's quarters, who happen to be on the same side. I don't know if she did this on purpose, but she gave him a perfect view
of their makeout spot.
Off the cliff.
So they were making out for a while.
Right.
Because he is already like in his room. There's a little bit of distance. He had to go in through the front door of this facility, comes in, and then like as soon as he's in the room, space beam again. And then we actually meet Lilandra for the first time, who pops into the room. She says that she's the sister of Deken, who has sought to control the Macron crystal, and it's basically driven him crazy.
Yeah. And if we haven't mentioned it yet, both Deken and Lilandra are Shi'ar, and she just kind of does an exposition dump. She says that when she learns what her brother wanted to do with the crystal, she defected, and that if the crystal's breached, so it took me a little while to get this. I didn't actually get this at this point, but I wrote it down for later. There's a galaxy in the crystal, and so if the crystal gets breached, and the galaxy in the crystal and the galaxy that we live in are both going to be compromised. which is, I love that comic book.
It essentially
logic.
is, if you break the crystal, it sucks in the surrounding galaxy to within the crystal as well. We find out the galaxies are at risk, and you see this alien planet where these people are like getting sucked up into another vortex. The planet basically destroys itself. Yeah, she just lets him know everything really all at once.
And so she talks about how she violated the temple to steal the crystal, and she escaped. And that's pretty much where we caught up with her, was on the ship.
Right.
Xavier was wondering why he's receiving all this. Like, oh, great, that's your story. Why am I seeing all of this stuff? And she says that their minds have been linked since creation, or at least that's the belief of the Shi'ar. And
since the moment of creation, it's a Shi'ar belief.
And it's a lot like love. And then Xavier's immediately horny.
Not just a lot like love, deeper than love. Specifically deeper than love.
So that's not a light concept for 8-year-olds to understand. And
we know what the word love means, and then you say it's deeper than love, and it's like, maybe we can't relate to it.
Yeah.
But we understand love times 2.
But we understand the look on Xavier's face when he gets a boner.
No, you don't understand that at 8.
So right about then, to get
Thank God.
to cock block Xavier's moment, Juggernaut breaks in.
His half brother.
Yeah, brother always does it, right? And grabs Lilandra, and that is literally where they throw the to be continued image. Juggernaut has one hand around Lilandra's whole waist. That's how big he is.
I mean, Shi'ar are like bird people, so it would make sense that she would be light with bird bones.
Or spider, right? She has the spider. Her and Deken both have spider designs. I've never figured that out.
But the Shi'ar have evolved from birds, whereas we evolved from primates.
I didn't know that. Okay, so she's a bird. Huh. I don't know where to go with that.
So normally at the ends of episodes, I will throw in little like fun facts and stuff. I actually threw all of them into this episode as we were going. The only thing we didn't acknowledge is just Rod wanted to say it. I had him hold back a little bit on it. Sean Cassidy, Easter egg, has much bigger role within the X-Men universe. Yeah. We'll talk about that in the next episode, though.
Yeah, he's not pleasant in the other episodes. He's a good guy. I agree with Wolverine's take on him. We'll get to that in the next episode. Well, thanks for joining us. Make sure to come back next week for the second episode dedicated to the Phoenix Saga. Otherwise, this has been really long. If you have,
it's still probably close to an hour-long episode.
It is already over an hour, but we'll cut it down.
Yeah, you edit stuff.
If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about the episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. Let us know what you want our clips to be. Do you want weird out of context stuff like me making fun of Rod for not knowing who GW Brigg is from S.H.I.E.L.D.? Or do you want stuff that's specific to the episode?
Oh yeah, that'd be helpful because I just pick things. So.
It's true. I literally don't know what the preview is going to be until I download the episode, and I just have a file that says clip.
Yeah.
And I am just as excited to listen to it as you guys are when you see it on Instagram or TikTok. Definitely not on YouTube Shorts, though. Nobody gives a shit about the ones on YouTube Shorts.
All right, see you next week.